I lived just up the road towards San Francisco, about 15 miles. So that's where I went to college, because I went there because I lived near Stanford. It was a good place for me to go. So I was in ROTC. The war came along, and it was kind of interesting. My roommate, as a freshman, was assigned to me. One of my two roommates turned out he was a German national. But long story why he was there, but he survived the whole World War II at Stanford University, getting an education as a German national. And all he had to do if he wanted to go off campus was call somebody, I suppose the equivalent of a parole officer. But he was the enemy only because he was a German, and he did have a nasty map on the wall, and he got happy every time he saw Hitler moving a little further east, which kind of annoyed us, but you live with what you got. So that was an experience. So I was in ROTC. It was horse-drawn artillery. The artillery hasn't seen a horse since World War I, but that's what we had. We pulled around French 75s, howitzers, which is a military name for what most people call cannons. And we hauled those around with a team of 6 horses, dragging them, and we were hanging them up on the palm trees up behind the campus, turning them over, whatever, making a mess of things. But that's what we did. And midway through my junior year, we were told we were no longer ROTC cadets. We were soldiers in the United States Army. We were sent to Camp Roberts in Central California, took basic training. Our unit happened to have 155 millimeter hours, which were bigger and heavier. And we were there for several months, I suppose 6 months. And from there we went to officer candidate school in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, took the usual OCS course, and became boy wonders and potential generals. I think it was 90 days later. So that's how I got in the military.
Fantastic. So next, where do we go from there?
Well, from there, we went through the class. One little story which was kind of funny. When we got our second lieutenant bars, of course, we thought that was hot stuff, and they were big shots. There were enlisted men just outside the chapel where we got our bars waiting for us. And the first guy to throw us a salute, we had to respond and also give him $1. They were there waiting for us. Today, I suppose it's $5 or $20, I don't know. But then it was $1. So we all got our orders. We were sent all over the United States, different places. I was sent to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, where I joined something called the 763rd Field Artillery Battalion, which was a bunch of coast artillery retread guys, old and decrepit, but they tried to turn them into field artillery guys, and I guess did.
Keep talking.
So it was, you want to turn the music down? Just turn the dial to the right, to the left. I guess that music is interfering. I don't think an interview is best conducted with Scott Joplin in the background. If you want me to do it, I'll do it. Wait a minute, goodbye folks, I'll be right back. I'm gonna turn the music off. Is that all right?
Sure. All right, Bob, we're still rolling. The music's gone.
Hello again. Scott Joplin is gone, and here I am with more of the narrative. So anyway, the 763rd Field Artillery Battalion was medium artillery. 155 millimeter howitzers, or cannon, if you will. And we towed those things through the pine forests of South Carolina. And it was pretty darn dusty there. I was made the motor officer of one of the batteries, a battery being in the artillery, being the equivalent of a company in the infantry. And I didn't know a spark plug from a gas cap, but they made me motor officer anyway. And I didn't learn much, but the trucks kept rolling. Fortunately, I had some mechanics that seemed to know what they were doing, and that was okay. So after our basic training, I found I was going to be sent back to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, for communications school. And I had planned the fiance and I, Audrey, had planned to be married in December, but when I found out I was going to have 3 months of banker's hours in the communications school at Fort Sill, I convinced her to get married before that school started. That's what happened. We got married. We went out to Fort Sill. I found a room for her to move into before she came out. She came out a week or two after the wedding. And it was in a rented room in a small home of a Comanche Indian. And the Comanche Indian was nice. Her son was okay. And what do you call those little animals that crawl under the door? I forgot what they call them, but little buggy things kept crawling around no matter how much we scrubbed the walls with Lysol. So we were in Fort Sill during communication school, and then I had to go back to Fort Jackson, which Fort Jackson, by the way, was in or next to Columbia, South Carolina. I got back there and I found that my battalion, the 763rd, had left for Europe without me, and they never even asked me about it, which made me very annoyed. I thought I should have been in on the decision. But they went, and I was there. So I went to the next level of command, called an echelon. I went to the next level of command, and a nasty little personnel guy there, a pimply-faced corporal, assigned me to a Puerto Rican battalion. It was great duty. I know habla español and ain't no speaking English. If I gave an order, they didn't hear it, and if they heard it, they didn't obey it. It was really a comedy of errors. I had only been there a few days, and a posting went up saying that guys like me, who were young artillery officers, could go to school to learn to fly small airplanes, small craft airplanes, and do their forward observing, which is what we were trained to do.
Had you ever flown before that?
No, never flown before. So I signed up in a minute, and the next thing I knew, my wife and I are back in Fort Sill, back in Shepherd Field, Texas, at the Air Force Base there in Wichita Falls. And they taught me to fly, and along with a bunch of other guys, and that lasted, 3 months or so, something like that. Then we went up just across the Red River back to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and there we did further flying, learning to do fancy stuff like landing and taking off in very short fields. And things got delayed on our orders. I don't know what happened, but we were briefed, if that's the word, by sitting around on bleachers inside a hangar to look at a map where some officer, captain or major or something, was pointing out on this little bitty island where the Japanese units were and where the American units were, and we had to memorize this, and this tended to change every few days. We were going to be sent out there as casual replacements. The reason we were going to be replacements, because the guys that were doing our job out there weren't there anymore. And those little planes were subject to small arms fire, machine guns, or whatever. And the guys up telling the cannons where to shoot, which is what we did. It didn't last too long. So we were replacements, all right, and we were called casual because we weren't in any unit. We were just going out to replace other individuals. We weren't casual at all. We were nervous in the service. We didn't like where we were going, but we didn't get a vote. That's not the way the Army worked. You were told where you went. Well, finally we shipped out to Fort Ord, California, which is where all the guys and women that were going out to the Pacific went and got new uniforms and swam across the swimming pool and got their shots and all that stuff to get ready to ship out. Things got terribly fouled up, and there was another long delay. It turned out later that the terrible ship we were going on wouldn't go. They couldn't make it go, but so that means we were delayed in Oklahoma and again in Fort Ord. Not bad duty. I lived not far from there. My wife and I found a hotel room in downtown Monterey, and we had 6 nice weeks in Monterey when we were getting the ship ready. Not bad duty at all. My dad even took a week's vacation, and he and my mother came down to Carmel and stayed in a nice little resort in Carmel. So for a week, so we really had a very nice time. Finally shipped overseas and going out into the Golden Gate, where I could look back and see where I'd lived for 2 years in the city of San Francisco, was a little bit of nostalgia. Not too thrilled about where we were going, but there you are. The boat was going. We finally got down to Hawaii. They didn't let us ashore. They let us see hula girls on the dock, but that's as close as we got to Hawaii in that trip. Finally, we went further down. We got into the war zone down there in Iwitak, headed for this ugly little island we were going to, and probably the invasion of Japan. And we heard a loud boom 2,000 miles away. It was the atomic bomb. Sounded awfully good to us. They played the surrender on the battleship Missouri over our ship's radio. And boy, were we glad to hear that. There were probably about 2,000 infantry guys on board who were going out to, pretty well be slaughtered in Japan in the invasion. And there were a whole bunch of different odds and ends of guys like me. And I think there were 25 of us pilots and a lot of other guys of different branches of the service, engineers and medics and whatever. So we were happy. The war was over. We weren't going to get shot at, and we weren't going to have to shoot at anybody. I think that made us all pretty pleased with life. We were just darn lucky, and we knew it. They finally put us on that old tub of a ship we were on. It was named the Polish Lout. No, it was named the Polo Lout, which I think means in Polish Northern Light. We called it the Polish Lout because it was terrible. And no, I won't go into that. But compared to what the guys were going through, they're getting shot at, it was nothing. So we finally went to a replacement depot near Manila, and I finally wound up in Japan in the 1st Cavalry Division. By now, of course, nobody was shooting at anybody, and we had a command structure outside of Tokyo, 1st Cavalry Division Artillery Headquarters, and the commander all the way from the general or colonel who was commanding at that time, including the doctors and the lawyers and the Indian chiefs, everybody that needed to go out to see the units that were spread all over the place, like occupation forces, small units of maybe 50 or 100 men under a captain or a major or a first lieutenant. It was easier to get there in my little airplane than it was driving all day in a Jeep or a command car. So I became essentially an aerial taxi cab driver. And that was really quite good duty because I became very good friends with a Catholic priest, Father Joe Heisel, and with the medic, the doctor, who had to go out to these units. And of course, he was the health officer. He had to inspect them for clean kitchens, clean latrines, and that kind of thing. So we would go out there in the morning. He'd do his stuff in an hour, and then they'd give us a Jeep and we'd ride around the countryside all afternoon and get back to base in our quarters in the officers club in time for happy hour.
Did you take a lot of photographs doing this?
I took a few photographs of Japanese villages and people, and I've given them to you that you may be able to use. The Japanese, at this point, instead of being nasty little people bound and determined to do us harm, were extremely docile, willing, cooperative, and friendly people. They had changed overnight. Things were very, very peaceful. The Japanese people were very, very cooperative. Yes, I did take some pictures. We'd get out of our Jeep and wander around the villages and towns, and it was very pleasant. I came home a little sooner than I would have in the normal rotation because I had some family problems. My parents had died when I was over there, both parents, within 6 weeks of others. I was to be the guardian of a 14-year-old brother who had lost his parents, of course, and they brought me home so I could...
But back up a minute. Inasmuch as you were taxiing officers here and there, you must have went to a lot of places based on what I saw with a quick look at your logbook.
We did go to a lot of places.
Name some.
Well, 8th Army headquarters was down in Tokyo. We were under 8th Army. And that was kind of fun to go down there. The engineers had taken some rubble. Tokyo was a mess, you know. It was in a firestorm, and most of it was rubble. But there was an office building downtown, several, I guess. And the engineers had flattened out some of that rubble and paved it over and made a little runway for me, or for us. So if I had to go down to 8th Army headquarters for some reason, and I did, and I would come in and I'd fly around a couple of smokestacks or something, or a couple of buildings, come in and land on the runway, and then when it was time to take off, I'd start going up. I'd go up past the 2nd floor, the 4th floor, the 8th floor, and hear all the girl typists in there typing away, and they'd wave at me. That was one of the places I went. Another place I went was, where I landed a lot, was a racetrack. I landed on the flat part of the racetrack to deliver people or messages or whatever it might be. Up around Mount Fuji, which was a little colder because it was higher, I landed on a meadow, but sometimes in snow. And I remember once I was up in Fuji, near Fuji, and it was getting late in the afternoon, and the captain that I had taken up there happened to be a particularly miserable kind of a guy, and he was later than he should have been getting to me to get up, and later than he should have been coming back, and we were going to come back in the dusk, and I didn't like that at all. So we had to take off. It was a hard takeoff. It was in the snow. They had flattened down, and I couldn't get up airspeed, but I finally got it up. And we just about got up in the air. We climbed up, and because I couldn't see, because it was evening and the gloom, I flew back over my field and looked straight down where I could see a little bit. And my guys had lined up trucks beside the runway with the headlights on, and I could see that, so I kind of dove straight down, So, I could still see those trucks and I'd go somewhere else and pulled out at the bottom. So it was a fast pull out and a rapid descent. And this miserable captain in the back had a cold and I don't know, he popped an eardrum or so. I don't think he was injured permanently, but he got a hell of a headache out of it. And that was okay with me. So he never flew with me again. Never did a general that I took from Atsugi Airport, where he had flown in from Guam back to.
Do you remember his name?
General Slocum. I think it was General Slocum. He had been artillery commander of Americal Division way back, and he's coming back to take over. I think it was Slocum. But he wanted to know when he got on my plane, and he was sick. He had been airsick. Where my parachutes were, I said, General, I don't have any parachutes. His first order was get some parachutes. Well, I got them, but if you put a seat backer on my head, it would go through the roof. If I put a backpacker on my head, it would go through the windshield. So I got them, but obviously couldn't use them. That was okay.
Did he try to sit on them?
What?
Did he try to sit on it?
What?
Did he try to sit on the parachute?
No, we didn't have any.
Oh,
he told me to go
I
get
thought you
some.
obtained them.
He told me to still get some after
Okay.
the next day or something. So he didn't get any. Well, that was okay, because we had a bumpy ride back to the field. He wasn't at all happy. He gave me an order to get some parachutes, and I never saw the general again the rest of my life. And that was fine. It worked out his way. I guess he was a perfectly nice guy, but anyway. So I think I pretty well told the story. We came back from overseas on this emergency leave for the reasons I told you, George. I was discharged in Marysville, California.
When?
In '46, in the spring. And I needed 21 more units to graduate from Stanford. And I went down in uniform, still in uniform, before I was discharged, before I went up to, or maybe after I went to Marysville, it doesn't matter. I was in uniform. I went down to Stanford, I signed up, I got my 21 units, and the day after I was discharged, I started up again in college, and I graduated that June, and then I moved, and I was out of the Army.
And what's your degree in?
Bachelor of Arts. I was going to be a journalism major, but because of the war, I could never finish. I had to get out as quick as I could and take whatever courses I could, because I'm now the guardian of my brother. I have a pregnant wife, and I needed a job and money. So I couldn't get the degree I wanted. So I had to go to work.
And where did you do? Where did you go to your first job?
I got a job at an insurance office in Boston. We moved back from California to Boston because my family was gone. And my wife's family was back here. And I needed a little family support, with this brother of mine to raise and one thing and another. So I came back east and started in Boston, and I've been in the East ever since, and been always stayed in the insurance business one way or the other.
Name some company.
Well, the company I started with was in downtown Boston. It was a big agency. It was named O'Brien Russell. And the company I wound up with, and I was with for over 30 years, was in Hartford, the Hartford Insurance Group, the one with the
steer.
Everybody calls it a deer or an elk. It's actually the stag, S-T-A-G, but you're right, the deer. And I worked for them for over 30 years, and I retired a bunch of years ago, and here I am.
What did you do since retirement?
Well, I live in Farmington Woods. I actually moved here 5 years before I retired. I've been in Farmington Woods 33 years. And I like it very much. I love it. We want to see if we like condo living. We had lived in a house in Simsbury with 4 bedrooms, 4 kids, typical suburban house. And we didn't know if we liked condo living. Well, we tried it, and that was 33 years ago. So I guess we liked it. It actually has been wonderful. And we both enjoyed living here. Both while I was working after I retired and until my wife passed on 13 years ago.
And you got involved in volunteerism.
And I got involved in a lot of volunteerism.
Tell me about that.
I drove for the American Cancer Society, people to radiation, chemotherapy. I kept in contact with all the people from our little church, our local church, who happened to live in Farmington Woods, and I saw an awful lot of them where they were ill, and stayed with them until they passed on. And it was kind of a liaison between their church and their home. And I made a lot of friends in Farmington Woods. And I'm about to leave it to go to what I call the old folks' home or the town farm. I'm at that age now when it's probably not the wisest idea to live alone. I can do it, but should I do it is a question. I've been encouraged by my children to do something like this, and I've decided as of this morning or yesterday, I guess it was, to do it while I can still SWAT, S-W-A-T, see, walk, and think. My eyes are lousy, but I can still see. I have to use a walking stick of one sort or another, but I can still walk. And I still have enough buttons to make more or less reasonable decisions. And that's the think part, SWAT.
Now, children, I know you have children somewhere in the area.
Yeah, I have 4 wonderful kids that treat me like a king. I have a son in Glastonbury who is over here at least once a week to help me out in all kinds of things, chores and errands, appointments and whatever. Another son that lives in Simsbury and his wife too, in the next town. They help me on all kinds of things. The son helps me a lot on my computer, but on other things too. And his wife is wonderful to me. I have a daughter in Keene, New Hampshire, who couldn't be warmer and lovelier to me. I'm going to spend Thanksgiving with her. I have another daughter who lives on the shores of Buzzards Bay, 12 miles across from the Falmouth side of Cape Cod, a beautiful home there. And I'm going to spend a week with her in a couple of weeks. She and her husband are very, very good to me. They're wonderful to me. They also have a place in Florida, and I'm going to spend a week with them. No more than a week. I'm going to spend a month with them, the month of March coming up this coming year. So my kids are treating me wonderfully. I have no complaints, and I have very, very good friends, and I'm fortunate to have them here in Farmington Woods. I'm very fortunate indeed. And that's about all I can tell you, George.
Well, a couple of memorable events that have occurred while you're in the service, such as the death of our President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You must have remembered that. Where were you at that time?
I think I was in college then. I don't think I was in the service. What year did he die?
45.
Maybe it was in the service. I'm not clear where I was at the time. I know where I was on the day that the day that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
Okay, we're talking August now.
Yeah, I forgot what it was, but it was a nice warm day in Palo Alto, California, where I went to college. Of course, most of the year the days are pleasant there. My mother had driven down from San Mateo, where we lived, about 15 miles to the north. She had driven down in a little convertible car we had, a little Ford convertible. And we were sitting in a drive-in. A lot of people don't remember what those were, but there was a hamburger and hot dog and Coca-Cola ice cream kind of place where you drove up in your car, and the waiters and waitresses came out, usually in little uniforms, and hooked your tray to the door of your car and took your order, and then came back with whatever you'd ordered, your hamburger, your Coca-Cola, whatever, and put it on the tray, and you ate it in the car. Well, it's not noisy in those places. Rock and roll music, maybe rock and roll wasn't in then, but music, loud music, lots of noise from the cars, radios going. And all of a sudden an announcement came over the public addresses, and all the radios went off, the sound went off, and it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt announcing the fact on a day of infamy. The Japanese fleet had bombed Pearl Harbor. It was deathly quiet in the place, and it stayed quiet, and it was over, and the world had changed.
Okay. Now back to getting out of the service.
Yeah.
You're talking about the volunteer work you did?
Yeah.
And did you join any civic organizations?
No, I don't think I joined any civic organizations.
How about the veteran?
The veterans, yeah, I joined the VFW.
Which one?
Okay, is it what?
3272.
Yeah, I joined volunteer, or rather, Veterans of Foreign War, post number 3272, Avon, Connecticut. Well, it's actually Avon and Canton, Connecticut. I didn't join it for years and years and years or anything. When I first was out of the service, I lived in a suburb outside of Boston. I went to an American Legion meeting. They tried to twist my arm into voting for something, and I didn't like that. Whether I wanted to vote for the thing or not, I don't remember. I just didn't like being told this is what I ought to do. I never went to another veterans ministry or veterans organization meeting again for years. About 3 years ago, when we were in Farmington Woods, two friends of mine that lived here, well, it doesn't matter who they were, but Tom Ramsey, let's see, who went to anything, well, my memory's gone, along with other things. Convinced me that I ought to go over to the VFW breakfast for them, where they have coffee every Thursday morning, and they have a luncheon in a certain facility called the Italian Club once a month. Well, I went to one of those evening meetings, and I started going to the breakfast coffees, which were informal, and I started to enjoy them. A bunch of very, very nice guys. And so now I go quite regularly. I imagine that other than weeks when I'm not in Connecticut at all, such as when I go to Florida, the rest of the year, I probably go to 2 out of 3 of the coffee hours, and they're pleasant. There are upwards of 30 fellows there, and we have coffee and talk and visit, and it's just a nice time. Yeah. So I do go to the VFW and I enjoy it. And I sell poppies with the guys on Memorial Day, and I go to the schools and do citizenship kind of things, talking with the students and in their assemblies and classrooms. And the poppy sale was pretty good. We raised over $20,000 last year in poppy sales. I think we're the best performing post in Connecticut. And it's not a huge post, but we sell them aggressively. And the wonderful thing is absolutely 100% of every dollar, every single penny goes directly to veterans or the families of veterans. There is no overhead at all, and I like that. We also send some uh, uh, goodie packages, gift packages to a unit in Afghanistan. At one time it was in Iraq. The unit tends to change from every 2 or 3 years, perhaps, because they come home or something happens. But it's a very good cause, and we do give support to people that need it, veterans from Iraq, Afghanistan, and active duty soldiers and sailors that are over there right now. So that's about my story, and you can think of something else you want to talk about.
Bob, I'd like to thank you very much. As I think I told you earlier, this recording will ultimately wind up at the Library of Congress. So thank you again.